Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Matchbook Horse Racing Podcast. We've got Grade 1 action coming your way this weekend in the form of the Tingle Creek. We've got the Henry VIII as well. We've got plenty of Aintree to discuss, and we might just turn our attention to top-level action at Fairyhouse as well on Sunday. So it's a really good weekend of jumps racing, and most importantly, it looks as though all the big guns are going to stand their ground in the Tingle Creek. Although I had a dream last night that Edwardstone was taken out on account of the ground, which shows how sad I am. Well, let me first of all, before I introduce the team, remind you of how to like and subscribe. Do it on YouTube or via your preferred podcast app. It makes it easier for you to listen or watch each and every time, in particular on YouTube. It'll be right there for you. That's across all our podcasts, including the World Cup. Our producer, Dan, is very busy at the moment, Dan Hussey, doing all the podcasts across all sports and also putting up winners left, right and centre. I'm just going to read what he's written on the document in front of me because he does it. Shout out to producer Dan, he says, who put up one bet last week, which was L'Homme Pressé, won at 2.6 on Matchbook. A brilliant case was made for a Grade 1 horse as a top weight in a handicap, and he duly obliged. Gold Cup contender. Follow him on Twitter at Daniel Hussey2 for more winning tips.
There's no praise like self-praise, eh?
Got to back yourself. Got to back yourself.
Do you know? So in the WhatsApp group we've got, he sent a picture of himself. You know how they're doing like on footballers when they score a goal? They're like, he actually sent one of those of himself, shirtless as well, because he plays a lot of sports, so he's in quite good nick. Unbelievable. Head to insights.matchbook.com. All of the podcast bets. They'll be up there after this. Dan Hussey, when he's put his shirt back on, will put those up for you later on. And episode 3 of The Other Side of the Fence with Ollie Murphy is out now. Actually, Charlie Poste, I'm going to bring you in to tell us a little bit more. This is a horse from the sales, having been broken in by you, now back in the yard in training with Ollie Murphy.
Yeah, I think you're just seeing the next sort of stage of the process, aren't you? That the horse has had a break and he's sort of been integrated back into Ollie's system. And I think the plan is to follow him through the season, Tom, isn't it? And hopefully see him on a track somewhere in the spring.
Well, that's it. So it's going behind the scenes and showing what you do with a horse, how you buy a horse from the sales, or what to look for, getting broken at Station Yard by Charlie Poste and by Fran as well, and then going into training with Ollie Murphy and hopefully producing a nice horse. That's it, fingers crossed. But I learned a good bit watching those first 2 videos, and this is installment 1 of episode 3, getting the horse in training with Ollie Murphy. So really insightful stuff there. Hello, Natalie Green. How are you?
Oh, really good, thanks. Nice to be back.
Yeah, good to have you back amongst us. Hello, Dan Overall. How are you?
Hello, Tom. I'm splendid, thank you. Some top-class racing to get stuck into, as the guys have mentioned. So, yeah, should be good.
It's good to see you. Good to see you. I'm wondering what scent you have behind you in the air freshener.
Oh, I think it's like a jasmine-esque flavour. I might start mixing it up, like start every time, just a different one.
Christmas tree. Me. You should go Christmassy now.
I should, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So what, next week, if I'm back, that's what I'll do for you, just for you, as always.
I feel like you two are like the really
tell us anything because we can't smell it, so you just.
Yeah, but you two are like this really clean contemporary background. Charlie, you are a bit more of the hectic. I mean, the dogs are probably going to run in a minute. Like, I feel like that background. I'm going to have to adjust that for another time.
It's an insight into your life. Though, I think,
stay true.
It's a personal touch. Yeah.
Hectic.
Exactly.
Right, the Betfair Tingle Creek is the first race we're going to be looking at. It was my fault. I went down that route. We've got Shishkin at the top of the betting at 2.1. We've got Grenadine, last year's winner, at 2.88. Edwardstone, the novice, stepping up now against the big boys, 7.0. Gentleman to Me, who beat Edwardstone at Aintree, but was disappointing on reappearance, 12.0. Funambule Sivola, 26.0. Dunvegan, another Irish raider, 81.0. Dan, you can kick us off because you've quite simply just written Shishkin, and ultimately, I agree with you.
Well, I think we can probably all agree that the race does kind of revolve around him and how he is returning from the bone disease, obviously, that's been quite well documented now. Obviously, I think that's factored into his price fairly heavily. Obviously, I'm pretty much willing to forgive that Cheltenham run as a whole as a consequence. And obviously, there'll be plenty of people who know far more about horse physiology than me, but the ones who I have spoken to about it seem to suggest that it would be more likely he comes back from the bone issue than it would be, say, if he had some sort of tendon injury, which I think bodes well for him. Obviously, the vibes have been fairly positive as well. I think you just look at this race and fundamentally, if Shishkin is still Shishkin, he's the best horse in this race by some distance. No other horse in this lineup would have beaten Energumene in the Clarence House, especially given the way Energumene controlled that race, had his preferred soft ground. Like, he was the only horse who would have had the ability to do that. And you go back to last year, and we kind of had similar questions about Shishkin, not to this extent, but similar questions before he made his reappearance in the Desert Orchid. Obviously, he missed a Tingle Creek as Nicky wasn't happy with at home. There was reports he wasn't feeling right, etc. And then he went to the Desert Orchid and then demolished Grenadine by 10 lengths, a race-fit Grenadine who just won the Tingle Creek by 10 lengths. I think at this stage, perhaps the issues are factored into his price enough to make him a betting proposition, especially his odds against. You'd never really get that if Shishkin evolved. So I think the price is right to take a chance on him.
Yeah, I agree. He is just the best horse in this race. And at some point, you've got to... I know it's all price relative, but you go, well, it was a bit of a blowout effort last time with his bone issue. They seem to have that behind him. Like, he's so comfortably, for me, the best horse in this race. For some reason, I've never been a huge Edwardstone fan. I don't know why. I've never fully taken to him. So I think at 2.1, Shishkin is a bet. And I think the market's made around the fact that Grenadine loves it here. But ultimately, as you say, at Kempton, Shishkin proved he's a better horse than Grenadine. I know he hasn't had a run, but I don't know. 2.1 is just too big about a horse that is one of the best 2-milers we've seen since the last Nicky Henderson horse. And I also thought Gentleman de May, I know he was really disappointing last time, but Alan King was adamant that his horse at Aintree was beaten on merit. And I know you can look at it and say, you know, he was beaten by a fresher horse and maybe he was a bit over the top after Cheltenham. But I was impressed with Gentleman de May, who's a bit of a loose cannon. I know David Casey has to work very hard in the mornings just to keep a lid on him, and he's obviously got his quirks, but like he is ultra talented. And I'd be looking, I think he's the most likely horse to go forward. I'd be looking to take the price about him now and maybe trade out of it, to be honest. I think there's a good chance he will. I'd probably be looking to trade out half of my stake at about a quarter of the price he is now. That's what I'll be trying to do anyway, because I think he'll go well for a long way, for all he might not win. That's how I'll be looking to play it. Gentleman de May has also been written down by Natalie.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, Shishkin, I also agree. I think if Nicky says that it's very, very mendable, the bone disease, it isn't going to worry me too much. Do I think he's probably the best horse in the race? I do. But I've just watched that replay so many times. I actually think Gentleman de May ran a cracker last time. Obviously, Rach came down on Cure Sublime, didn't she? Took a tumble. And he got really badly hampered. And he tried to jink a bit to the right. And then he was like all over the show and then darted to the left. He'd obviously just got a bit spooked. So was then unseated. That was at the last. He made a little bit of a mistake at the third last. But actually, to be honest with you, the only thing I've taken out of that race is I just thought he looked a bit tired in those closing stages. And that wouldn't worry me then too much coming into this. So a horse being a little bit tired in the closing stages with the wizard that is Willie. And like you say, Tom, I'm always one for a bit of fun. I mean, at the prices, I've got to have a go on Gentleman de May. I have to at the moment. It's the most enticing against Shishkin and Grenadine, which are two terrific horses. I just think Gentleman de May might be slightly overlooked because actually that last race was scrappy. It was messy at the end.
And between Grenadine and Shishkin, would you have a view, or just Gentleman de May at a price?
I just hate that. I love Grenadine. There's something about that horse. The course record is insane. 3 Sandown wins. I don't know. Shishkin, I mean, look, he's got race fitness, but is he still as good as Shishkin on Shishkin's day? No. So it's very, very, very tricky for me to those two. I suppose it's like if I'm at the races, it's when I want to look at them in the paddock. That's why I'm being a right wimp. And if I bail out on Gentleman de May, then it covers all bases, doesn't it? Because I don't actually have to pick between the top two.
That's very true. No love for Edwardstone here, but a bit more love for Grenadine from Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a trappy race. I mean, like Dan said, if Shishkin is back to his very best, then 2.0 is an absolute steal, isn't it? But I think Grenadine is one of those horses that kind of gets underrated, and you know, he's only an 8-year-old himself. I thought he was fantastic in the Holden Gold Cup, and I don't know. Again, Dan is right when he says bone injuries are definitely a better fix for a trainer than tendons or ligaments, 100%. But I just thought all this bone disease thing after Cheltenham, we're an excuse-based culture, and we were looking for something? I don't know. He looked like, to me, he was feeling the effects of Ascot. He never really went early. And I don't know. I would like to see him go out and be back to his brilliant best before I'd be wanting to get involved in backing him. And for that reason and that reason alone, Grenadine, I just think, is rock solid. He's going to pitch up. As Nat said, he loves Sandown. He's had a run. Paul is in great form. He's incredibly bullish. And Paul would absolutely love to smash Shishkin as well, I would say. You know, it would be the sort of thing that really turns him on, you know, to kind of see him sort of almost finish the horse off. So for me, I'm with Grenadine in this occasion.
It's like,
I mean, you've had it all week, haven't we? We've had it all week, haven't we, with the English-Irish back and forth. And, you know, I love that bit of like aggro, as in, you know, like let's get it on. And then, yeah, like I say, this is the sort of clash that Paul loves having one wound up for. He'll love nothing more than trying to, like I say, beat Shishkin again and almost sort of like be questioning whether the horse is very much on the way down, you know. Like
when Surname beat Altior and they were singing "We Are the Champions" in the box afterwards. Love it.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing like winning graciously, is there? Now, you know, we're going to win and rub everyone's face in it as well.
But I love that, and I also love the needle we've had this week with Elliot coming out talking about the lack of competition over here, and then Nichols calling it bullshit.
Oh, going mad, yeah.
Great, I love that.
Yeah.
We don't have enough of that in racing, do we? You know, like as in like it's kind of brilliant seeing like the managers in theory like getting stuck into each other instead of everyone being so like, you know, like well mannered and, you know, no one's gonna, you know, we're all gonna say the cliched things. I thought it was brilliant that he was kind of out there saying, you know, this is absolute crap. Yeah,
completely agree. Love it. Okay, anything else to add there? Good. We move on to the Henry VIII. We move back to the Henry VIII. 1.33 John Bomb, Boot Hill 4.33, Unexpected Party 13.0, Honor d'Argent is Big Outsider 101.0. So officially we've got no bet here. Nobody's having a bet, so we don't want to spend too long on it. I suppose the things I want to ask, which make it interesting, possibly if you wanted to have a trading angle, I don't know, is who goes forward. Like John Bond just goes here, right, Charlie? Doesn't he?
I would say so. I mean, I mean, we were talking about it briefly, and I don't see why any of the other riders are going to particularly want to help him out by giving him a lead and something to aim at. I mean, he made his own running around Warwick, and I'll probably see a similar scenario again. Boot Hill tends to want to be held up. I think Skelton's horse ideally wants further. So, yeah, I would imagine he's just going to jump out, make all, and the likely scenario is he's just going to get further and further clear, I would imagine.
The only thing from a price point of view, if the handicapper has done his job correctly and he's rated John Bond £5 superior to Boot Hill, Dan, why is there such a big price differential for only £5 on pure ability?
Well, I guess John Bond's ceiling over fences is so untapped compared to, I guess, Boot Hill's relatively as well. I mean, he obviously won that handicap at Ascot fairly impressively, but if you're asking who's got the highest ceiling, I think it's John Bond by some distance based on his chasing debut. I think Boot Hill's an interesting one, as you say. I think he's the one who's most likely to kind of just come with one run, because I think he's got the tactical pace to maybe just creep into the race and have a go, but I don't think he'll get anywhere near him. I guess from an interesting angle, I thought maybe Unexpected Party is a horse who wants further, might just be the one who's plugging on maybe into second. If Boot Hill's had that run, then cracked, I think he might come back on Unexpected Party passive, because I actually really like Unexpected Party with view to potentially handicaps over middle distances in the future. That McFabulous run now looks pretty decent. I think this isn't going to be his day, but it's going to be good experience for him, and potentially he's a horse we end up looking at something like the Plate for in March, or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself there, but he's that kind of horse, that kind of profile for me.
Okay, and no doubt the trainer will have something in mind. I would imagine. Any flaws with John Bond, Nats, or no?
Oh no, I love the way he jumps. And I'm most excited to see him jump at Sandown. I can't wait. The rhythm and the fluency, and I'm just going to watch it and enjoy it. And I'm really excited to see John Bond at Sandown, because Sandown's also one of my favorite tracks to watch jumpers, because I love that rhythm that you get into and the railway fence. So I just think it's fantastic. I would probably just, literally go in market order 1, 2, 3, my bet.
Okay. Simple.
I really would. I probably just would, because it's, if you want to have a bet, like if you want to have fun, it depends how you play, isn't it? I mean, I just think otherwise I'm a no bet. So I could just try and guess the forecast to make it really fun, because at the end of the day, expected party is currently around 12. So you can just watch that, and there's always fun to be had. I thought the thing with Boot Hill would really like the ground, because his breeding has a lot of suggestions of good ground. So he might just ping off it, which will be nice. But can they get to John Bond? I don't really think so.
Okay, I'm definitely just sitting back watching and enjoying what should be a nice display from John Bond. And let's move on to the 220. So this is the handicap hurdle over the 2. 10 currently lining up in that. Love Envoy heads the betting off the back of her really good season last year, 2.75. On Public is 5.5. Playful Saints 7.0. Hermes Boys 7.0. Friend of her 11.0. Bigger prices the rest. And do we have agreement here? There's a bit of differing. Charlie, I'll kick off with you, because I know Natalie half agrees.
I mean, of the ones at the top of the market, I thought Home Public was the one I'd be most interested in. I thought he looked good last time out, but I thought it was a trappy race, and for that reason, I came down, and it's a bit of a stab in the dark on Martator. Is that how we're pronouncing it, Tom? You happy with that?
Yeah, I probably said it wrong. What did I say?
I don't know. I'm going with that.
I missed out a T, so I definitely got it wrong.
And look, this horse is in a completely unknown quantity. He's come over from France. I mean, Venetia does very well with that angle. Horses are flying, as we've discussed already, with Dan Hussey's incredibly sort of shrewd pick last weekend that they're snaring big race winners on Saturdays. And this horse got really interesting Grade 1 form in around all the big tracks in France, around Auteuil and Wind Up. And I just thought 1-4-2 on some of the literal form lines could actually look lenient. And I just thought he was a fascinating contender. He's only a 5-year-old as well, but typical French horse. He's got plenty of experience. Whether he might want a little bit more cut in the ground. But again, something to factor in is the hurdle track at Sandown will always ride significantly slower than whatever the chase track is. And I just thought at the prices, there was an upside to him, because we don't really have any idea how his form is going to translate to England. But like I say, he's bringing Grade 1 form to the table. And if he's ready, if he's going to be, like I say, that sort of performer over here, then he should be up to kind of taking a handicap out off of 1-4-2. So I just thought he was a fascinating horse.
Natalie.
Yeah, I totally agree with Charlie. And I did actually try and message Charlie Duke, but I've obviously left it too late just because of the unknown about this horse. But like a lot of people, huge fan of Venetia. I think her horses are really coming into it. They've been running really, really well. Should be delighted. Of course, Longpress was amazing, wasn't it? At Newcastle. But that French form I often try and follow. Like Charlie said, look, it's really solid French form as well, on heavy, very soft, all the things that I think work well with Venetia as well. And even though it won't be that ground at Sandown, that's not a negative for me, because it'll just bounce away off the ground and probably find it a piece of cake. With the quality of races in France, I think, it should on paper work out very well. I have been following Ollie Greenall and Josh Guerra's yard a little bit, because it's just quite close to me. So it's kind of one of those yards that I do keep an eye on. I thought the Home Public looked pretty decent. Non-runner at Bangor, because the ground wasn't quite right. And Bangor's quite a funny track like that, isn't it, Charlie? It's like almost like it's quite sunken. So I can see why didn't want to run it on that ground. But then won at Wetherby and travelled really strongly. I like that. I thought won in pretty good style, but it just looks the type to to make his mark in these type of races. So that's been playing on my mind, and I just quite like this horse. So as we say, Venetia's French recruit could be anything, but I think Hon Public's just sticking out at me a little bit, and I think I'll regret it if I don't have a bet.
I'm with you on Public or whichever way you want to go.
Home Public.
On Public. The Yard of Flying, I thought a £7 rise was fair enough for the success last time. And I sort of wanted to take on the mare who I really like at the top of the betting, but this will be quite a different test against the boys in a handicap on first start of the year. So I thought I'd probably win and place. Just hiding behind that on Public was worth having a go at. Who haven't we done? Dan.
Yeah, I think it's just touching on Love Envoy a bit. Obviously, the market is completely revolving around her. Obviously, she was great last year, but I think if you read some of the stable tours, she had a setback just before she came back in, so she's a bit later into some of the others. And ultimately, we know like this isn't going to be the be all and end all for her. They'll be basically working backwards from March, and we've seen in recent years the likes of Tell Me Something Girl, Queen's Brook, like these mares who have the mare's hurdle as their ultimate aim. They're brought along slowly. So I think off a mark in the high 130s against the boys' first time out, I couldn't really be with her at the prices because we just know like there are bigger targets for her down the line. So I've ended up going with Hermes Boy, who is a very interesting horse. And I think he just hasn't quite delivered on some of the promise he's shown on the track just yet. If you go back to last season, he split I Like to Move It and then the 133 rated Halo de Zobo in the novice hurdle. He was a massive eye catcher that day, came from off the pace, was hanging to his right, looked a real horse of some ability. Then he won at Exeter, beating horses rated 120 and 127 in second and third. And then he went off favourite for a handicap at Sandown, 124 at the start afterwards. Watch that back. He didn't jump a hurdle. Like his jumping was awful, and he was still there at the second last with a chance. And I think the combination of some poor jumps and the really testing ground just caught him out. But I think he's got quite a bit in his favour here today. Obviously, he's had that experience now. He's still only a 5-year-old. I like how Jane Williams horses tend to progress from 4 to 5. They do steadily bring them along. Obviously, he's had a prep run under his belt, and most of the yards have been desperately in need of it. I think Jane was 1 from 24 in October. You now look at her past couple of weeks. She's had 4 winners from her last 11 runners. The form is certainly changing. Going back right-handed, I think, is a massive positive because he's often hung out to his right. Obviously, generally looks a far more comfortable horse that way. And cheek pieces go on for the first time. Now, I could only find 5 horses that Jane's ever run in first-time cheek pieces. They produced 1 win and 2 placed efforts. So that's a pretty decent effort there from admittedly low sample size. If you expand that to all headgear first time out, it's 6 from 40 for a pretty decent 15% strike rate and profitable to back blind. So I think he's pretty much got his ideal conditions here. Going right-handed, stiff 2 miles, ground isn't too testing. He's £5 lower than he was at Sandown last time when he was favourite for a handicap. So I just think as a young horse, there's a lot to like about him here.
8.0 win and place in the 220. 330 is the London National. The winners wear Cavani, menswear London National, no less. 3 mile 5 for this. Revels Hill is the horse atop the betting. So I'm letting prices load up. Currently 2.88. Dish Abbott is 5.0. Quick Wave 5.5. Eclair de Guise 7.5. And then we're into the double figures 15.0 and bigger the remainder. I'll come back to you, Dan, because you and Charlie are in agreement, so you can kick us off.
Yeah, I just think Revels Hill is a pretty solid favourite here, to be honest. Like, obviously, I'll normally start looking at races and see if I can oppose the favourite like I did with Love Envoy, but here I just think he's pretty rock solid. Obviously, very progressive last season, ended with a couple of wins at Taunton, latterly over 3.5 miles, where he travelled like the winner all the way there, and despite a late error, won pretty cosily. He made a very pleasing reappearance at Ascot the other day behind Your Darling, who was obviously a very impressive winner. If you look at the market that day, he was a big drifter. I think he opened at about the 5-1 mark, went off 11-1 in the end. And again, if you go back and look at Harry Fry's stable tour, he noted that the plan was always to get a run into him with a view to coming here to the London Nationals. So no doubt this has been his big early season target before they potentially look at other nationals in the springtime. I think it's a fairly modest enough race. I don't think it's great in behind in terms of the strength and depth. And I know he's a fairly short price, but I think Connections would be pretty disappointed if he can't win this, given he's still very unexposed over these marathon trips, and I think he still looks fairly handicapped.
Charlie.
Yeah, I completely agree. I went through the whole race trying to find a horse to oppose him with, and I just couldn't. I just kept coming back to him. I mean, I thought, again, chucking in the fact that it was a 2.5, it was almost at Ascot 2 mile 5. You could almost see it was being used as a race to bring him along, and the fact that he finished an excellent second to a horse that he was very impressive on the day, and Your Darling was a really good start. He's chucked up a pound. That doesn't really matter. He stays these marathon distances well. He's a solid jumper. He's a young horse on the up. Yeah, I thought he was really difficult to oppose. And I suppose when it's all said and done, we're trying to be picking winners, and I just think he's by far the most likely winner of this.
Yeah, agree. Although I'm with Disha Aber, who ran a really good race here last year, goes well at the track, was a nose second off £2 lower. So I thought that was pretty solid. I definitely wasn't against Revels Hill at the top of the betting, but it was just a slightly bigger price about Disha Aber. It's a pretty modest opinion, to be honest. So it'll be very small stakes for this horse, but £2 higher than last year. Should be there or thereabouts, I thought. And the yard are in quite good nick as well. It's very similar ground to last year. So I thought 5.0 was just a small win bet for me. Dacia, apparently, Daniel Hussey, who put up Long Presse as his best bet last week. Dacia.
Has he got his top on yet?
Price wise, listening in, yeah.
I think he probably has his top back on now because of the cost of living, etc. It's chilly, but yeah, just look at his social media. It's always that sort of gum shielding post game look for him. Top eyes, just classic Hussey.
Is that not like an automatic yellow card or not? Does he not get booked for that in over there?
He loves it. It doesn't bother him. Should do. Natalie, you are looking a little bit more left field than the rest of us.
Yes. Don't get me wrong. This is, I think the winner's Revels Hill. Honestly, I can't get away from that. I mean, come on, massive interest back up in trip. I mean, everything's just tick, tick, tick. I mean, like we say, just bumped into one with Your Darling. But my theory is probably it's good-ish enough each way, or you could have a funky bet, Revels Hill, chased home by Eclair de Guy. Eclair de Guy, right, sticks out just for a couple of reasons. Lucy's horses have been okay, haven't they? Running. What was that Hurricane Bay that like literally ran away with Bryony Frost and then went on to win? Hurricane Bay. That's really it was quite recent. I think it was on Charlie Hall Day. Anyway, so we've been looking at Lucy's horses a little bit. Now, Eclair de Guy just stands out a little bit with that 10 stone 4 under Harry Cobden, which I quite like here. That second at Warwick, latest over this distance. To be fair to the horse, he really didn't get the clearest of runs just in off the home bend. He's had a wind up, and that last run at Warwick proved that hopefully it's going the right way, the wind up on the second run. This will be the third time since the wind up. So you'd like to think the horse is knowing it's feeling okay, it's breathing okay, and it can finish off its races. Do I think Eclair de Guy is going to beat Revels Hill? No, I don't. But am I interested by Harry? 10 stone 4 looks intriguing. And if I was going to play in each way, if the prices stay or if Eclair de Guy goes on the drift, then yes, I probably will. But Revels Hill does look a worthy favourite.
Okay, consensus is that Revels Hill is going to be very tough to beat, and two of the panel going for him officially. That's the London National done. That's Sandown done. We've got 4 Aintree to look at now. Starting with the Many Clouds Chase, Ahoy Senor on the retrieval trail off the back of that disappointing reappearance. 2.38. Sounds Russian, 6.5. Chantry House, 6.5. Noble Yates, 7.0. Sam Brown, 10.0. And Dashel Drasher is 15.0. Charlie, I'm going to come straight back to you because I guess I'm most interested in your selection. I can definitely see it, for all I couldn't quite commit to him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I put Ahoy Senor up as my star performer when we did the horses to follow. So there's part of me hopes that he bounces back from what was a pretty horrible first start of the season at Wetherby. I mean, freshness was put down as a reason, and he obviously loves Aintree. So it might be that he can just turn this on and demolish these. But I just thought, 2.0, 2.2 was short enough about a horse that like I say, that there's question marks over. Chantry House is again another enigma. You don't know what you're going to get with him. He could turn up here and on his A game, and again he's won over the course, but I wasn't sure about him. Sounds Russian is progressive, but up north, and sometimes I just wonder you end up with an elevated mark because of that. And I just kept going through them again, trying to find one. Dash or Drasher I was with over hurdles, but stepping up in trip over fences, he's going to get taken on for the lead by Ahoy Senor. Might make it tricky. Sam Brown was interesting, but yeah, I just came down with Noble Yates in the end. He got beat by Ahoy Senor around Weatherby in the Toten Novices Chase last year, but you'd imagine, knowing connections, it was sort of being used as a stepping stone towards the Grand National. And, he won that impressively off 147. Disappointed at O'Toy, but was pulled up early. Just didn't seem to fancy that at all, and then was really good in a listed race around Wexford last time. You could argue Runwild Fred didn't pitch up, but he still won as he liked, and he's off 158 there. He's up to 160. I think he's nearly top rated in this race, and I suppose the only thing that was putting me off is the fact that the connections, and you always presume that there's some sort of plot in the offing. But, this horse is 160 now. I can't believe they're thinking, well, handicaps you'd imagine are out of the question. He's not going to get dropped in any way, shape or form to be coming down to a sensible weight for Aintree again. And so maybe they're just going to see where he ends up. And this looks like a good fit for him. And I thought the price, he was attractive in this field because, like I say, he's a young horse with plenty of upside, and 7.0 I thought was good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, fair enough. Natalie.
Yeah, this is tricky stuff, isn't it? And quite right. So it should be Ahoy Senor was my horse to follow last year because I went to Lucinda's, and when he came into her outdoor arena, it's like a wall along the edge of her outdoor, and I was just like, what? I mean, wow, what is that? I mean, he just looked completely different. This was before he'd even gone to Carlisle, and then saw him at Carlisle. I was like, oh, love him. So I'm not gonna jump ship on a horse I've basically been banging on about for 2 years. Because that would just be stupid. I adore him. He was like a kid in a sweet shop. He lost the plot at the Charlie Hall. I don't know what. He had too many electrolytes or something. I don't know. He's absolutely whizzy bop, wasn't he? Off his head. I was like, what are you doing? So I want to see Ahoy Senor win because I don't see how a horse can be that talented and just lose its talent in one race. I don't, because there's nothing wrong with him as in physically. So I don't see how he can just become untalented, but it was too bad to be true. I actually nearly cried watching Charlie Hall. I actually did. It was just disaster. I talked about it for days. Like, what the hell's gone wrong? Chantry House, I can't have, to be honest. I thought lacked, didn't really travel last time, didn't really jump with any fluency. So Egg on Face probably goes and wins, but no, thank you very much. I want Ahoy Senor to win, but Sounds Russian is a very, very nice horse. And Ruth Jefferson, when she has one, she has one. He looks set for a cracking season, if you ask me. I think we're going to hear a bit about Sounds Russian. He relished a trip last time. It's really smart chaser, effective on soft, heavy, reins good. Aintree looks good to soft. There's just plenty to like about Sounds Russian. I think she's really consistent. I think she's got another good one here. So I'd like to see Ahoy win, but I'm very nervous of Sounds Russian.
Okay, I couldn't be having Ahoy Senor after last time, and I sort of went down thinking I wasn't going to have a bet, and then I got to Sam Brown, Dan.
Yeah, it's one of those races where I think you can probably pose questions of everything. And the one I think that just has the least questions to answer currently about what we know is Sam Brown. See, I know some will see, he's the oldest of the field. He's going to be 11 in a month's time, but this is only going to be his 15th career start. We know he's been fairly delicate and has had his problems, but he's also coming here off the back of 2 back-to-back career best efforts. Obviously, one at the Aintree Festival with that handicap of 147, very emphatically that day. And then his third in the Charlie Hall, I thought, again, was another step in the right direction. Only just run out of second by Eldorado Allen that day, who obviously went on to finish second in the Betfair. Admittedly, miles behind Protectorat that day, but still clear of Bristol May and Frodon. So I think that's a solid piece of form. Obviously, he was well beaten in this race last year, but the ground was extremely testing then. It was his first start of the season as well. I just think we're looking at a horse who, despite his age, is on a slight upward curve, and we know he's probably going to run to a level. Like, I think he's probably a grade 2 horse. And if a Hoisinor is back to what we know he can be, he is a potential grade 1 horse and will win this. But the price just isn't there to compensate, in my opinion. So I think given the price that Sam Brown is, I just think he's the most likely one to run his race. He'll be there or thereabouts. He may just find one too good, but I think the chances of him running a sound race are far more likely than pretty much everything else in this race.
Yeah, and add to that when he disappointed in this race last year, that was his first start of the season. He's had a run now, which was, as you say, quite encouraging, I thought. So it was very much a price thing, but I certainly didn't want to back anything else. I'm just going to have a small win bet on Sam Brown at the prices. Let's move on to the the 205. So this is the feature on the day over the Grand National fences, the Becher Handicap Chase over 3-2. Top of the betting now is Ashtown Lads at 6.5, 6.6 for Jess Keel. Captain Kangaroo is 10.0, Hill 16, 12.0. Same price 5-star Getaway. Snow Leopardess, last year's winner, 13.0. She's £6 higher this time round. Was a nose winner last year. Dr. Kananga going up in a couple of places, 15.0. Why don't we start there, actually? Because is it Natalie that... actually, there's three of us in agreement with Dr. Kananga. Go on, Natalie. You can kick us off.
Dr. Kananga is my best each way bet. Be sharper for that recent spin. There's the cat. Spin over hurdles. It's like a zoo in this house. I think what you've got to do is, if you make a justification for Dr. Kananga, is you've got to go back and watch that Chepstow and Sandown wins last year. You need to see that, because what I'm imagining in my head, this is one of my favourite races ever in the future, is he's going to be like a spectacle. He's going to like jump amazing. It's going to be like really on edge, and we're going to like holding on to our seats because we've had this massive each way, and then he's going to get in the top 3 and we're going to celebrate. So that is my full justification on Dr. Kananga, because love the way he jumps. I think he's going to really take to this. He'll be sharp from that recent hurdles run. And I'm pretty keen, actually. But Geskiel is my one to win, Tom, for Ol and Josh. Again, sorry to go in that camp, but I've been watching Ol's videos, and I just think perfectly campaigned, perfect break. Yes, I'll dance by a nose. That was brilliant in the Grand Sefton, wasn't it? But there's something about Henry Brook in the Becher which I like, and it's like, go on, dare you. And I love to see that. So it's a brilliant race.
Yeah, I thought he ran into a really good horse, Dr. Kananga, last time over hurdles, and I don't mind that angle, particularly coming over the national fences on first chase start of the season. I think there's every chance that 140 is still a lenient enough mark, and the extra run at the back end of last season was on probably 2 testing the ground, but the 2 prior performances were really taking, and just looking at those shorter than him in the betting, I was just a bit surprised he's as big as he is. I wonder if it's sort of half connections dictating that, when you've got a Mullins horse in there who's nearly half the price. But I thought Dr. Kananga had probably achieved just about as much. Dan.
Well, yeah, exactly. But if it is a connections thing, then it's fairly short-sighted, because he may not be well known. But you look at Chase's over 2 miles 7+. He's got a record of 8 wins and 4 plays from 18 runners. Like those have been the races he's been able to target. Obviously, the Galloping Bear being the other one who had the race taken away from him the other day. So it would be somewhat poetic if he was to land another big one here. Yeah. And like you, I just think he's the type that is going to take to these fences extremely well. You go back and watch his jumping, as Natalie said, he's so nimble, he's so bold in the way he takes on fences. And I think crucially in the 23 runner Becher, that's going to be important, especially given his run style. He's going to be at the front. He's going to probably avoid all the difficulties in behind, which I think is going to be key. The form of his races last season is working out extremely well. The horse he beat at Chepstow, I think it's Wayfinder. He beat him by an ease down 12 lengths. He's now £17 higher, and he's favourite for the Welsh National Trial at Chepstow on Saturday as well. The Sandown win as well. The horses in behind have got up in the weight since. Had a great prep for this. This has clearly been the plan for some time. I think the price is generous based on, A, the trainer not being as known, and also the lack of Aintree experience. But I think he's definitely the type to take to this, and I think the price more than compensates for the slight unknown of not having tackled these fences before.
Charlie, with regard to that, what are you looking for? And you can bring in your selection here, but is it a concern of yours if horses haven't tackled these fences before? I mean, quite often in this race, you are getting horses trying it for the first time, given the nature of the race, given the time of the year.
I don't think it is as much now, you know, as in I think a sound jumper should always probably adapt fairly well. I think sometimes what you're looking for as well is horses that aren't always the most spectacular jumpers, but economical in what they do. You know, as in almost if they're a little bit too bold, that maybe could be a negative. You know, you want a horse that kind of measures what he's doing and can be short, long. You know, rather than a horse that you just think is literally going to go and blast round there. I mean, I came down.
Sorry to jump in on that. Do they say now with these new fences that you want a horse that learns they can kick the top off it?
Yeah, exactly. So what, you know, yeah, completely, because you've got the easy fix fence as the base now, so it's very sort of forgiving, you know, as the course has been modified, and I think they've done a fantastic job with it, by the way. But the horses can get away with so much more now that almost horses that's expending loads of energy, almost over jumping and being spectacular in what they do, I think is wasting valuable energy when really they, in the greatest respect, they probably only need to get 3/4 of the way up and be kicking through the birch on top, you know. So like you say, you're looking for a horse that is intelligent enough to work that out quickly and is economical with his jumping or her jumping, rather than being overly spectacular. So I think a sound jumper should always sort of adapt to these fences well, and then it just comes down to often whether they can cope with the big field conditions that these sort of and the often incredibly strong tempo that we tend to find over the national fences now. I mean certainly over the 2.5 mile trip races, you really want a prominent racer that's got bags of early speed, you know, because it's track position early seems to count for so much. Going to my selection, I came down with Didero Vallis. It's a bit of a stab in the dark. He's been round here 3 times. Oh, well done, Giles. I agree, mate. Yeah, he's been round there 3 times. You know, he hasn't really set the world on fire. Ran fine behind Snow Leopardess last year, but I mean the big thing is he's now £10 lower. Venetia's horses, as we've discussed already, are in great form. Lucy Turner's ridden a stack of winners for her, you know, and I think I certainly don't see that as a negative. And I think only once in the last 10 years has a horse carried more than 11 stone to win this race. Now, whether that is normally because we get more testing conditions than what we're going to possibly see tomorrow might be a factor, but this horse got a lovely race and weight, 10 stone 8. And I do still feel that if they have shown the ability to jump round there, it is still a positive, because it is something different to what a horse is normally going to see. So win and place for me, Didero Vallis.
And Giles has said this. Basically, you and Giles are just copying each other. Stats are against anything carrying more than 11 stone in the Becher. And that rules
Charlie,
out.
is that you? Be honest. Is that
this is my like alias. Yeah, exactly.
That rules out all bar 5 of them. It's interesting. Only Black Lion in the last 10 years have carried more than 11 stone.
The only thing is, like, at least I'm modest enough to kind of use a different name and not like Dan Hussey that just says it from himself, you know.
But no, you do. I do agree, Charlie, with the jumper thing. Like, you know, Snow Leopardess, you can almost argue she's the most beautiful jumper, but she is exuberant. She is, and she can jump very, very, very big, and that's not always what you want. You look at a horse like L'Homme Presse, he's so good because he is economical and he gets through the air. So there is a very good point, that because you are wasting time, and also it's tiring for a horse to over jump all the time. So no, that is a good point. So I'd add that bit of insightful information.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth touching upon these fences as they are. 3 shouts for Dr. Kananga and Didero Vallis going up as well, and also Natalie as far as the win bet goes with the Greenall horse. The next we're going to look at is the 240. Interesting handicap chase this. Ollie Murphy talked about Gunsight Ridge on the Jumpers to Follow podcast we did. and Gunsight Ridge won on reappearance. He's 8.0 here. Riders on the Storm 3.75. Race Shashka is 8.0. Night in Dubai 8.0, as is Gunsight Ridge. Kilteely Briggs 11.0 into the bigger prices off the back of that. Dan and Charlie, you're in agreement with the Ollie Murphy horse, who won impressively last year, and then Ollie said quite openly he felt he probably ran him in the wrong race, and then he left his season behind off the back of that. He was impressive last time.
Which one of us do you want to go first, Tom? Because I think we're
go on, Dan. You go. You go first. You go first, mate.
With pleasure, mate. So it's an interesting one, Gunsight Ridge, because the barrier to him normally is he's always a really short price. But this time around, obviously, we've got Riders on the Storm who's basically making the market for everything else. So all of a sudden, Gunsight Ridge is coming here off probably a career best effort, and he's a decent price, which for the first time has actually tempted me to support him. I'm normally fairly adamantly against him. But as you mentioned, Tom, he won really nicely here the other day over 2 miles. Obviously, it was a weak enough race, it turns out, and I admit that this is definitely a stiffer task, but he did that despite making a blunder 4 out, which would have ended the race of a few others probably, but he recovered from that remarkably well. A £4 rise, I think, is fairly lenient and generally normally comes on for his first run of the season. I think that bodes extremely well. Obviously, he steps up to 2.5 here. I mean, he's got the early pace to cope with a race of this nature, and I still think he's fairly unexposed over that 2.5 trip, which I think promises to suit. So he's a point-to-point winner as a 4-year-old. There is some stamina in his pedigree as well. And if you look back, his only other start over the intermediate trips over fences came when chasing home a certain Long Press, who was running off 128 that day. And unbelievably, Gunsight Ridge was favourite to beat him. Actually, I think only getting £1. So that kind of shows you the story of Gunsight Ridge's career, really. Always short and not always delivering, but I think the wind up, I think another season on his back, and I think he's now just slowly maturing into the horse connections always thought he would be. And at the price, I think you're getting a progressive horse with plenty of upside, so more than willing to take a chance on him.
Charlie, what do you want to add?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, Riders on the Storm, like you say, makes the market because in theory, he still could be very, very well handicapped, but he's a horse that's had a lot of questions to answer in recent times. Fair play to Richard Hobson and the owners and connections taking out the old Rome, but I wouldn't want to be backing him short to follow this up personally. But therefore he kind of he elevates the price of almost everything else. And yeah, like Dan said, I think they also said that the wind up, Ollie kind of felt it made him sort of more relaxed in his races as well, which is an interesting sort of angle. So that for the 2.5, he could at times race a bit keenly, but he seemed to be better the last day. And he's only a 7-year-old. I think he's a midnight legend as well. So they tend to improve with age and time. So yeah, I thought that his price was pretty generous. I thought £4 rise was fair. And like I say, 7.5, 8.0 about a horse that's on an upward curve. Yeah, I thought there was plenty of upside to him.
I'm going to place lay Riders on the Storm. I'll make that case a little bit later on. But honestly, if there's ever a performance that was too good to be true last time, beating Hitman, beating Galore, I just can't have it as he was a 17.0 winner that day from out the handicap. It looks so good on paper, and it's just for me, it's not going to happen again. So I'm well against that horse. That's probably my main way of playing the race. But just one that I thought was half interesting at a price was Capo Toy, who's into the 20s for a trainer that I was quite impressed with last year. Does tend to want a sound surface, and last time was taken on up top, and it suited those that came from a little bit further back. Every chance that if he goes forward, he'll be taken on here because there are bits of pace in the race. But I thought his price was an overreaction to how that race developed last time, and hopefully that run would have just taken the freshness out of him. So small win and place bet on Capo Toy. But the main way is being against the favourite every which way, and he'll probably go and score. But there you go, Natalie.
That's the way it goes. Yeah, I've got two. I'm really interested in. Copper's Cross is one. I think Copper's Cross is still really improving, and non-runner H at that last time. That Carlisle run, I seem to be obsessed with Carlisle, but I do like watching my Carlisle races. Was really good. I mean, the horse was sort of held up in rear. He won really comfortably. Lots to like. I think, to be fair, what I thought was it'd be the Grand Sefton over the national fences, but anyway, this looks very much a target in mind, but a reasonable and accessible target for this horse, and actually a pretty good price as well, 10 stone 10. I mean, there's a lot to like about this 7-year-old. So Cooper's Cross is certainly on my checklist. And then I'm going to play my wild card, because I always have one wild card. And his last run was at Wexford. Yes, but he ran a lovely race. It is the Irish Raider, and it's Handsworth at a massive price. Almost one of the outsiders, second to outsiders. Obviously only go each way, otherwise you would be really crazy. 10 stone 2, pretty lightweight there, but just watch a replay. He ran a really lovely race, at Wexford. He kept on from really off the pace. He wasn't quite able to get to the winner, not surprisingly, but he just looks a really genuine horse and a genuine temperament, which I like to see in a race such as this. I think he'll just carry on going, and I wouldn't be surprised if he picked up some of the pieces, to be honest, to hit the frame. So Cooper's Cross and Handsworth.
Handsworth 25.0, 23.0 incidentally for Capo Toy. So a couple at the top of the market, a couple a bit further down as well. The 3:15 is a 2.5 mile handicap hurdle. Dan Hussey's favourite ever horse, Langer Dan, runs here, who he got his money back at Aintree after the Cheltenham.
Shock it's named after him. God, this vanity never ends, does it? Unbelievable.
It would be called Shirtless Dan if it was named after our producer. Prices wise, Walking on Air is 4.0, Langer Dan is 4.5, Harbour Lake is 7.0, Herbie Air 10.0, Sizing Pot's 11.0, bigger prices the rest. I am going with Langer Dan as my best bet on the day, so I finally come round to this horse. Like, he was second to Galopin des Champs of 135. He won at Aintree of 137. He's only £7 higher here. Last time, I don't know. Yes, he was a bit disappointing on the face of it. He should certainly have finished ahead of Wada Rev anyway. But maybe he needed the run. He likes the course. Maybe the ground was a bit easy last time. The thing with him is he's not a very big horse at all. And maybe I'm overthinking it, and they're working back from something as opposed to trying to take what they can. But I think he got his end of season win last year, and I think they're just going to try and get what they can this season on the way to the festival at the end of the year. But that's not going to be their main target. They're just going to try and win what they can en route. He's definitely capable of 144. And the market surrounds this Walking on Air, but I'd much rather back at half a point bigger Langer Dan what we know about him compared to what we don't know about Walking on Air, pulled up in Grade 1 company last time. I think Langer Dan's a great bet. Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, Walking on Air after the way he jumped at Aintree as well. Like, I think he's very, very short for a horse coming, that's got big question marks to answer in that he could have the ability to take this field apart off that mark. Just with Langer Dan, I suppose if it was Dan Hussey after Cheltenham, it would have been Langered Dan, wouldn't it? Rather than Langer Dan. I was talking to Dan Skelton the other day, and I mean, he did say though, I just forgot to add that with the Becher, that he thought, I said, oh, what's the big Saturday race you're going to take out this week? And he said Ashtown Lad in the Becher was his big Saturday hope. Just whether, I don't know whether he's a good tipster or not, but that's what he went with. Herbie Air for me. I'm disappointed. Has Nat put this up or not, because she's the Ollie Green or Josh Guerrero connection, so it's worrying that she hasn't gone with it. I thought this horse was seriously impressive. Yeah,
that's even more.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I don't know. No, you're shrewd, Dan. I'm with you. I'm happy. I'm always happy when you put my selections up.
Sorry, you're saying that
he was really.
Is that what you're? This is.
It's fine. Don't worry.
That's just unbelievable.
But Natalie said to me before, look, Nat said to me at the beginning of the show that she's worried she had the same selections as me.
That shovel is out.
Keep digging.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a lot of shovels here actually as well. So yeah, I'm well loaded with shovels. Herbier. Moving on, Herbier. I thought he was really impressive at Newbury. I thought the fact he's only gone up 6 was fair. Grivitana ran a cracker in the Jerry Field, and that he beat that day. He'd had the wind up. Second run is no negative off the back of that, and I just thought he was a really progressive young horse. Again, he's only a 5-year-old that I could see taking higher rank still through the year, and I think 138 is very workable. So yeah, Herbier for me.
What do you want to add, Dan?
Yeah, not too much really. I think he's a horse that they've always held in some high regard. Obviously, he was a decent juvenile performer a couple of seasons ago. He went through his awkward 4/5-year-old season, I think, pretty well. Obviously, he won a couple of races, had Global Citizen behind him in his first start over an intermediate trip, ran extremely well in the Martin Pipe as a 5-year-old as well. I thought back in 9th. I say that he bolted up the other day with 2 miles, clearly 2.5. I think he's certainly his trip. He's still unexposed at it, and he normally comes on for his first run of the season as well. So I think with natural improvement that we see from him, I think, in a market where, to be honest, I can't touch Walking on Air, and Langadan, I think, is also another one I just couldn't touch. I think he just might be a spring horse, to be honest. So again, they're making the market for everything else, and I think Herbier is the solid one.
All right,
a spring horse or a plan horse?
Well, it depends on how politically you want to phrase it.
Yeah, spring is the plan, right? Right. Let's move on to any other bets. So this is really Charlie and I talking here. So first of all, I'm putting up Salt Rock in the 247 as Chepstow, but that's really only to alert people that this is one of Charlie's horses to follow, who you broke in. First start for Kim Bailey, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, we broke him in, ran him in a point-to-point. He absolutely bolted up as well and sold him at the Cheltenham Festival sale. Look, he's a horse that we always, from very early on, we always liked. I'm not going to put him up because we feel sick tomorrow, as in because they paid a lot of money for him, and so you're kind of hoping he backs that up. And Kim Bailey is a great guy, but he's the most sarcastic person ever. And so I daren't even ask him how he's going. And then the other day he spoke to me and he said, "Oh yeah, we're happy with him. I mean, he's working well, but he's working well against a lot of slow horses is the problem." So, but you know what he's like. So I just hope the horse makes a nice start. I thought he looked quite a competitive novice hurdle, actually. There's some interesting sorts in there. But yeah, if he's going to justify what they paid for him, he wants to be running very well in that race.
I don't want to buzzkill, but I've just checked the Racing Post and it says he's a non-runner.
Oh, great.
That'll be ground related. I would imagine that will be ground related because I know he was wary that he wanted to make sure the ground was definitely on the slow side. So.
Well, they've got that out there early, to be fair, because he is, yeah. I mean, when we started the podcast, he was still in, so that's great.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
Well, that's all right, because Sam Turner's horse to follow, Knowsley Road, runs in the race, so I'm going to change it. Who's the horse you like, Charlie?
What, the other bets? I mean, this is today at Sedgefield. Regal Renaissance for Henry Daly runs in the 12:30.
Hour and a half.
It's had 3 starts. Pardon?
In an hour and a half.
Is that a non-runner? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I will just check for you because.
Yeah, just before I make a load of nonsense.
He's still in. He's still in.
Yeah, he's shown promise on all 4 starts. Yeah, he has drifted. That was my only concern. But Henry Daly, I think he's had 9 runners at Sedgefield for 2 winners. So it's not somewhere he travels very often. The form of the last start when he was 4th has worked out well. Poetic Music ran well behind Lucia in a listed race at Newbury the other day, and Dollar Bay took a handicap out at Leicester off 101 when heavily backed. So I thought 96 could be quite workable, and yeah, I just thought Regal Renaissance was interesting. But as Dan Overall has said, he is drifting like hell. But maybe that's because Henry Daly isn't a gambling yard, and there's plenty of ones in against him that are.
Natalie, you've got one on Sunday.
Yeah, so just two quick things just to reassure Charlie. The 3:15, I didn't have a bet. That's why I wasn't on the old green old horse, because I would have ended up boring our viewers because I could have talked about all of them. Second point is Charlie Deutsch did get back to me regarding the 2:20 at Sandown with a French horse, Marta. I knew I'd get it wrong when I tried to say it. Marta Tater. He just said, look, yeah, he's been working really well at home. Doesn't know a lot about him. He could be a bit keen first time, but that's it. So all good vibes there. My horse on Sunday is for Ian Jardine, and it's called Done It Head. You might have seen Done It Head more recently in a bumper, which was just flipping remarkable because, like, in the closing stage, you thought, no way. And he's a really big horse that holds his head up. He covers the ground brilliantly, but his turn of foot, I didn't expect. I thought he was going to be quite a lolloping horse. My father-in-law owns him. I've loved him since day dot. We've given him loads of time. He did have an injury, but fingers crossed, come back really well. All credit to Ian and the yard because they've done so well with him, but so well that Ian really is the only one that rides him at home. So I get all the videos, and he's declared for Kelso on Sunday at 11:35 a.m. in the National Hunt Maiden Hurdle. Conor O'Farrell is on board. And look, this is one of my favourite horses that of my father-in-law's. So I've been excited about him for a long time, and he's been schooling well. So come on, everyone, fingers crossed, done it head. Got no idea what the price is. I don't even care. What's the price, Dan? Probably rubbish.
I don't think it's opened yet.
Have we got one?
No, but you can go on. Oh, I was going to say something else, but you can go on. Yeah, not opened yet. No.
But it looks a winnable race. I'm just looking at it now.
Yes, so of course, that's the plan. We want, because he's a good horse and he doesn't need any confidence bashing. We want to just ease him in. So there you go.
That's Dan's way of saying.
On Monday.
Shit race.
Again, it depends how PC you want to be, Tom, you know. But yeah, that is one word for it.
Oh, say it how it is. It's no problemo.
Laura, I'm going to tell you about the sign-up offer first of all. It's a £30 welcome offer, money back as a free bet if your first bet loses. If you like our content, I say this all the time, it is the best way of supporting the podcast by opening up an account and having a bet on the horse racing exchange, because it shows support of Matchbook and in turn support of the podcast as well. If you do place a bet and it doesn't win, you will get your money back as a free bet up to £30. Use the bonus code INSIGHTS30 for that. INSIGHTS30. New customers only, 18 plus. BeGambleAware. Lays, I will kick us off with the best lays. I'm going to place Lay Riders on the Storm, as I've said, because I feel he was a bit too good to be true last time, and he's short. He's going to be probably odds on to place, so I'd take him on there. And I'm also going to have a back to lay on Gentleman de May, who I think will go forward and trade at about a quarter of the price that he is currently. So that's how I'll be looking to get out of that. Although I half don't mind him for a win bet, so I'll probably leave half the stake on for the win. Charlie, you've got a lay for us.
Just Wayfinder. He's a really progressive young horse. And he loves Chepstow, but he's climbed up the handicap a lot. I think Dan mentioned him with tying in with Dr. Kananga, and I just thought this Welsh national trial was a deeper race, and I think he's 3.0. Like if he ends up bigger than that, I've no interest. But at 3.0, I'll probably take him on just for win only purposes.
All right, that's a Wayfinder at 3.0 less than the 137 at Chepstow. Best bets then. I've gone with Lagadan, who I think should be favourite for the race. So at around about 4.5, Lagadan win bet is my best bet in the last race we previewed at Aintree. Natalie, your best bet?
Oh, I don't have the best one. My best bet is going to be in each way on Dr. Kananga in the Becher.
Dr. Kananga win place in the Becher. A few of us like that horse. Dan, your best bet is a horse that was so impressive last time. Went up £8 at Kempton, Dalamoy.
Yeah, he did. But this is a horse that I've had in my tracker since his debut. Like I've always been a fan of him. He's been biding his time before he went over the fences. I know that's a massive cliche, but you saw him in the paddock that day, Tom. You would probably agree. He's a massive stamp of a horse, and you look at his relations. Don Poli is a half brother. DBC is a half brother. Polites as well. It's all chasers, and he was well backed on that chasing debut as well. 7-1 in 7-2 and won as he liked. Like an extremely fluent jumper of a fence. That race wasn't the deepest now, but not much has actually run since it finished. And if you look at the times, it was 13 seconds quicker than the mare's handicap on the same card. And that was won by the useful Tweed Skirt, who's now rated 128. So clearly he's a horse of some ability. He actually transpired that he'd been quite sick in the weeks after he came back in. Like he hadn't been fully geared up for that. He was probably a few weeks behind in his work. So the fact he was still able to do that is somewhat miraculous. I don't think this race is necessarily that good. And I think Chepstow is a track that will suit him better than Kempton. So if you can get 3.0 or bigger on Dalamoy, then I think that's a very good bet.
And Charlie Poste.
Yeah, Rebels Hill, Sandown, for all the reasons discussed before. I just think he's a young horse on the up. And yeah, I'm not sure this is the deepest of races.
Okay, and Dan Hussey's best bet, because everyone's asking, is going to be Lagadan, I think. Oh no, Facile Vega in the 2 Mile Maiden. Get out of it, Hussey. Everyone think Honeysuckle's going to win? Honeysuckle wins, right?
Yeah, should do, and hopefully.
Yeah. What we're taking now, I like doing the update on the Constitution Hill versus Honeysuckle, because when Constitution Hill was just edging favouritism in the champion hurdle market, there were a few people going, Honeysuckle's got to be back. Well, now he's about 4-7, isn't he?
And you all mocked me as well. You're all on here saying, "Oh, you've got to back Honeysuckle. You've got to back Honeysuckle." And you were going to clip up what I said and take the mick and all that. I think, who's laughing now? Who's laughing now? Clip that up as well. Yeah, we'll have a montage of these through the season. And when she beats him in March, I mean, with the ultimate pain, won't it?
Yeah, exactly. Then we'll see he's laughing. Yeah. Right, good stuff. Natalie, Charlie, Dan, thanks as ever. Don't forget to check out insights.matchbook.com for a recap of all the bets. That'll be up after this. Bye-bye.